All right. Well, we've got enough folks that we should probably get started here. So let's see. This week for new PRs, lots of RGW stuff. So the first one I've got here, a couple of these are me, so I guess I'll go over them. This one is kind of an experimental one to see how much benefit we get by just passing the buffer list that represents a directory entry for bucket listing to RGW rather than in the CLS, we currently decode it to do filtering, but then we re-encode them. And this instead takes the original buffer list for the directory entry and passes it through rather than re-encoding the in-memory representation of it. So it's a little ugly, honestly, but it does seem to have a performance benefit. I'm thinking it would be nice in general if we had a kind of cleaner, more generic way to take an encoded version of something and pass it through an entire pipeline without doing decode, encode, or encode and decode along the way, and like creating multiples, different buffer lists at different places. But this is just kind of the first test case of it, so that's what that is. Next one, this is, well, actually the next two basically are two different ways to just get reading some config options over and over again out of the hot path in RGW op. So the second one, or the first one on the list, the 29943 is the one I think we're going to go with. It's simpler and yeah. In some ways, the legacy options are actually nicer than using getval, at least in my opinion, because the getval is just kind of ridiculously high overhead.
I would like to see some more discussion over what the future is for the legacy config apps, because it sounded like the intent was to remove them eventually, but if we still need something like that to get good performance in the hot path, then I think we might revisit the naming of that. Or find something to replace that with.
Well, I've been asking for about 2 years for us to replace it. So I think we should probably do that.
Yeah, so I don't really understand why we ended up implementing what we did without like making sure that it worked well for this kind of thing. It always bothered me a little bit that we went through and replaced all the legacy options like this, and then we replaced it with something that, it performs poorly in the hot path. And then you have to do kind of crazy stuff like, implement observers somewhere, generic or more centralized, and then pass through a bunch of. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter, I guess now. But I agree with you guys. It'd be nice if we didn't have to do all this stuff.
Well, more specifically, I mean, it's not super trivial, but I mean, I talked to Adam Emerson and Radoslav a couple of times about what we might do, and there seems to be a few problems, both locking and a couple other things. But I guess lack of a bulk interface, another one. I think it has more to do with the config observer, but it'll be nice to see some sort of a Ceph development talk or something about how we might tackle fast interface for this.
Sure.
And I think the other one, maybe we'll come back later in your talk, but I think the I don't know if this is going to annoy people, but the dout logging format using IO streams is also a huge tax. And it should be tackled.
Yep, agreed. I think if we are not going to jump on LTTNG as the way forward, we at least need to have some kind of like binary logging format for like high output logging, or for high debug level logging.
Yeah, that would be our preference. That's encouraging. You had called out in your PR of this PR, I believe, that this initial with the CLS log levels. Casey explained to me why this is broken. Another thing we should fix. It doesn't seem to be providing any preprocessor driven selection at all. I wasn't aware of
Yep. I would you be open to just getting rid of the like debug 20s that are in there because I imagine they're not hit very often, right?
Well, now as you mention it, probably sure, but why don't? But I mean, my biggest concern during this whole the cycle of the last week and a half is, are we only going to do the hackery, or can we make sort of indelible, permanent, reliable paste ups of the things we know are pinups, I should say, I guess, of the things that are really busted, and try to get and that are cross cutting every module, every so many places in the code. There are 1,000 instances of this.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, let's move on with the PRs here, and we can add that to the list of things to talk about. Okay, we've got some changes for perf testing, I believe, for ARM64. I think there were some things that weren't implemented before that are now. Those now work or something. I have to admit I didn't look really closely at it. Okay, in RGW reshard, this is another one of mine. This is don't dump a bunch of JSON in when we're doing these background reshards, and that was like a stupid win. It went from like 65 seconds for one of the reshards down to like 25 seconds. So it was nice. And then the last one here is Casey's PR, which is really good. It takes these reshard checks out of the right path, and that was a really big performance win when you get to the point where reshard's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. It's got like that delay that is in place. I don't remember what it is. I think it's like defaulted 10 minutes in master or something. And previously, during that time, that whole time, you saw like a 4x drop in put throughput just going to one NVMe OSD, and that completely eliminates it. So that's a great improvement.
Yeah, that reminds me we need to tag that for backports because it's going to be useful all the way back to Luminous.
Yep. Casey, do you want backport any of this other stuff?
Yeah, I think anything that applies that's performance related is worth it.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, if as long as we can even get into Nautilus, that would be my goal. But Luminous, if possible, would be cool. Okay.
Are we even planning more Luminous releases?
I
don't know if there's been discussions around that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm personally just focusing on Nautilus. All right, let's see. Close stuff. Okay, Neha closed both of her PRs for the Bluefist Alex size. Sage's change is the one that ended up being merged in the long run. He just had a slightly different approach where he was only changing it for the shared device and not for the DB device. Let's see, an old PR from Radic got merged. I think he had updated it and Kifu reviewed and got it in quick. This was just this slightly optimizing this container-based bounding code case, I guess. And then Igor closed his old version of the Intelligent DB Space PR in favor of his new version 2. He's got a little bit down in the updated list. All right, updated PRs. There's a fix for Rados Bench. I reviewed that. That looks good now, pending one small nit. Igor's new version of his Intelligent DB Space usage PR. I think Sage reviewed that last. So that, I think progress is being made there. That's good. Sam's got his PR for expanding LTTNG trace points and improving stuff in the Ceph object store backend. And I believe Kifu reviewed that and added it to his testing branch. There's this finisher one. I guess, Igor, you reviewed that. Is that working now, or is that moving along? This is 29482.
Yeah, I approved this, and Ifu has had some comments on that. So
Okay.
not sure
Yeah,
what's the final status for this.
Okay, cool. Here I added that to add the note about Kifu putting that through testing. Okay. Oh, and it looks like there's been more discussion and work on iObject, and Jason, I guess, is excited about it and talking about doing more with it. So that's good.
Yeah. Mark, maybe you would be willing to help with a little benchmarking, at least around RBD and Cephafest potentially to make sure that we're not regressing there.
I can attempt. I've got so much on my plate right now. We'll see. I'm going to try to test other Adam's starting work too. We're trying to get that in next week, so it may not happen until after that.
Okay. Yeah, I see Adam joined, but if you could maybe give some pointers of what tests we could run.
Sure. One thing is we do have the ability in CBT now to basically test FIO against kind of all of the common RBD interfaces plus Cephafest, both the kernel and Fuse interfaces. So you can kind of run the exact same test against all of them by just changing the client endpoint. There's an example in the CBT examples directory that you could try if you want. Let me paste that. There we go. So if you kind of look at that example, there's like a client endpoint section there in the YAML file. And there's a bunch of kind of commented out drivers under the client endpoints section. You can basically just change those out and it will run the exact same FIO benchmark each way.
Very cool.
Excellent. So yeah, actually it'd be good to get a little bit more coverage on that to make sure there aren't any bugs that I don't see because I don't try things differently. So that'd be cool. All right. What else do we have? Oh, auto tuning of the MDS cache memory limit. Patrick has been continuing to review that and suggest changes. So I think that's hopefully close. And then our other Adam has been continuing to work furiously on his shrouded Blue Store work, and that his biggest workload right now is continuing to rebase it due to all of our other changes, and he wants us to get it in. So we're gonna have probably a big push next week to make sure that that's in good shape and we can merge it. So that's coming soon, hopefully. What else? A bunch of stuff here that's not been updated. The one thing I will say is that my avoiding double cache PR, I think I might be able to eliminate that if I implement an OMAP cache inside BlueStore, a generic OMAP cache, not specific to bucket directory entries or anything. But if I could generically implement that, then I wouldn't need to have a separate block cache at the RocksDB level for onodes. And then I can have the priority cache manager let the upper level OMAP cache and the onode cache compete at kind of an equal footing, and the RocksDB cache would be kept at a lower priority level. And that should then allow us to avoid the double caching in the same way that PR kind of did through having a separate column family. The advantage of that approach is that then we have half the number of column families. Well, not quite half, but roughly half. We wouldn't need an extra column family for onode, RocksDB onode, onodes per shard. There may be an advantage to doing that besides the cache, but that was the primary reason for doing it. And since we're going to shard, we probably don't want to double the number of column families for this if we can help it. So that might be a way to kind of fix multiple things with one stone, I guess. We can talk about that more later, but that's one of the things that I've been thinking about a little bit recently. So anyway, that's it for PRs, I think, unless anyone has anything I missed. All right. The only discussion topic I have today is all of this RGW stuff. Maybe before we get into that, is there anything else anyone would like to talk about or get into? All right, well, let's do this then. So probably as can be seen, there's a lot of movement happening right now. Lots of stuff for finding things that are getting fixed. And I suspect when we're done with all of this, we're going to see some really, really big numbers. Already, there are some kind of big numbers, when you, at least for certain circumstances, like bulk loads of objects. Casey's PR by itself does is a big improvement, and then there's other things that are improving this too. So I think we're going to see some really, really good results out of this. But there are kind of some outstanding questions. Actually, you can, if you want, there are a couple of Google Docs that just show some of the existing testing there. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of them just because it's a lot. But if you're interested in the Etherpad, there's a bunch of data there to look at. So the two big things that I think are open questions, and Matt, you can correct me if there's others too, but the big things in my mind are how to reduce the overhead in the OSD for kind of doing work on getting like bucket list entries to RGW. It sounds like we want to do filtering there and potentially even more filtering than we do right now. And so the question is how to get from RocksDB all the way to RGW with the least amount of work involved in the intermediate layers as possible. That's kind of one thing in my mind. And then the other thing is, I guess there's three things. The second thing would be how to fix the hashing to support ordering, so we're not fetching the same data over and over again.
Well, yeah, and then to the point of that, I mean, that's not a novel idea. The work's ongoing to work on that, and so that's kind of
Yes.
in fact that's been documented. So I want to prioritize getting that done. I sort of yeah, I mean, I think we would agree on the farmer point, but I don't want to lose the ability to do interesting work in CLS ops. And I have a little bit of a concern of turning the protocol blobby. So there's that.
One question I had for you regarding that is, could we avoid decoding the whole thing? This is kind of Casey's idea. Could we avoid decoding the whole thing if we restructured it so that we were just decoding the filters or the things that we're going to filter on?
Yeah, potentially. I mean,
Is there anything that you want to do that would require decoding the entire directory entry?
well, that's the thing. Not yet, but I guess, do we know that we're not prematurely optimizing some of this, and we'll have to backtrack at some future point?
Well, I mean, if you look at the profiles in that PR here, kind of get an idea of where we're spending time in the TPOS TP threads when we're doing bucket listings. So like maybe around 16.5% of the time, which is really more like 30% of the time when you look at actually the time spent in the thread, is doing the actual OMAP work for do OSD ops. Well, not just OMAP, but some other stuff in there. There's decode actually happening too. I got 6% in CLS log, like we were talking about earlier. 5.10% in decode. That's RGW bucket directory entry decode. So it's really just the bucket entry decode in that for loop. Another 4.6 in encode, and that's the thing that we kind of more or less mostly get rid of when we in this PR, or but it just passes the bucket or the buffer list through. Then a smattering of other stuff here. So I guess when I look at this, it seems to me the things that stand out, right, are okay. Do we need to do the fetches all the time, the OMAP fetches, right? Can we reduce that?
That's a high level decision about layout.
Sure. Or I guess in this case, I was thinking on very much on the OSD side. Can we make those faster? If I can get them, if I can make do OSD ops faster, potentially I can make this faster for you guys. And then the other stuff though is all very much inside CLS, the CLS code itself, right?
I don't know whether this is the right point to insert this, but you already mentioned that we want to do more filtering in CLS. And I have a PR that I'm working on which is doing that, and it's working, and I'm going to want to optimize it a little bit further so we can skip past subdirectory entries, which we don't want to return in cases where there's a delimiter. But I was also talking, and this is an idea that's been floating around for a bit, but currently, if we ask for 1,000 entries, we ask each shard for 1,000 entries and then do a merge sort of the top of those. And that seems very wasteful because you're pulling a bunch of stuff over that you're not going to use. So I want to optimize that a little bit and try and figure out, a minimal but reasonable set. Like we'll very likely get, 99.9% of the time we're going to get all the things we need by really reduce the number of things that we're returning, and potentially encoding and decoding as well through that whole pipeline. So anyway, so those two things will help as well. In the performance issue on the OSD and even in the RGW as well. So, and reduce memory requirements in the RGW.
Yes, Eric, I think if you can do that, if you can, change the way that the hashing for the sharding works, like Matt had suggested, so that we're preserving ordering. I mean, it looks to me like it's going to be
that's even
a ridiculously big speed up.
Yeah, that's a whole different. But having said this, unordered listing simulates that, right? So
it does, right? We're going through shard by shard with unordered listing. And so if you want to see what that will look like, do an unordered listing.
Yeah, I did. I think I successfully taught HSBench to do that.
I commented on it, Matt. It didn't appear to be working for me, but yeah.
I saw the CLS list. I saw CLS list on order being sent when I debugged it.
Yeah, it only seemed to do one op. It didn't seem like it was actually doing any kind of
Okay,
Um,
okay, yeah, maybe cocked up, but I'll okay, but the basic idea, but the basic mechanism works.
cool.
You can add
Yeah,
the params, I think legally. Okay, I'll fiddle with some more if you want, if you care.
yeah. It looks. I mean, otherwise it looks good.
Okay, I'll figure out why it doesn't why isn't it whether it's actually reading results. But it's definitely sending stuff, and I verified that they were unordered.
Cool, cool. That's exciting. I had no idea how to do it, so I was very happy to see that you figured it out.
I spent time in Delve poking at structures until it became clear.
So the other third thing that really seems like low hanging fruit or something to figure out, right, is your idea, Matt, regarding making the reshard not block writes.
Although it was my impetus to do that, Casey's been typing that, so he has a strategy. He's just something to
Yeah.
make do it.
I have a design mostly typed out. I'll probably send it to the list today.
Awesome. So you know, as a kind of the backup option, right? At least getting the JSON out of that path improves it a lot. Like, we're dropping from, like in the test case, it was like 65 seconds down to 25 seconds. So at least if we only do that, it'll be better. But it's, still scary, right?
What scares me is that most of a lot of RGW's interfaces are using JSON or XML formatting. And if that's just bad in general, then there's a lot of room for optimization. Adam had
Sure.
pulled in, is it Rapid JSON for some of the IAM stuff? So it might be worth kind of using that for a lot more of what RGW is doing.
We could get a lot of improvement if someone in their gratuitous amounts of free time were to go through and take all the places where we basically build up a JSON object out of maps and vectors, and then pull what we're interested in, and then throw it away again, and change that to using their sort of pull event-based model to just get what we want at the point of parsing.
Alvin,
Idea, yes.
Sounds good.
we have a former intern who's might be just the person who wants to extend their C++ skills to incorporate this parsing intelligence.
Very good. So yeah, I guess those are the three things, I guess, that seem like they'd be, at least so far to me. And Matt, you're absolutely right. This is stuff that you guys already knew about and were working on. Just I didn't realize quite how I guess the benchmarking brought it into focus for me.
Well, no, you had a lot of help. And if again, if focused on, maybe change some priorities around, we wouldn't have got. I figured we would probably have gotten to some of these things later. We're trying as hard as we can to do the reorganizing of the directory of the bucket, sharding the right up front because it's algorithmically it has there's some right ways to do that. And get and all the band-aids after the fact will multiply complexity more than they'll help, I think.
Sure. I think want to try to figure out how to implement some kind of OMAP caching in the OSD, not necessarily in the CLS or any of your guys' code, but
Well, I'm intrigued by that. How would that work, and what would it? Is this just like pre-computed things that have been accessed recently? Just accelerating what you should already get something from the extent cache, right? I mean, things that are already hot want to be fast to read.
Right now, the only place that I know of that OMAP data is cached is in the RockCB block cache, and it competes with the ONode cache and the BlueStorm buffer cache memory via the priority cache manager. The problem that we have right now is that the RocksDB block cache it caches everything. It caches both O nodes and OMAP. So that if we want to prioritize caching OMAP, we also end up prioritizing caching RocksDB O node entries, which we don't want because we already cached them at the BlueStore level. We really want to have O node and OMAP competing at the same level with RocksDB cache sort of operating at a different level, actually multiple levels, because we want the indexes and Bloom filters to be cached at high priority. We sort of want everything else to be cached at lower priority than the actual like BlueStore level caches. And since we don't have an OMAP cache right now at BlueStore, it makes this whole thing really wonky and irritating, which is what the double caching PR sort of fixes by having a separate O node column family in RocksDB. But in retrospect, that's easy to do. Like it wasn't hard to write that PR, but kind of in retrospect, as I think about this, I don't think that's the right solution. I think we'd be way better off having an actual like, some way of caching OMAP in BlueStore, and it gets weird with our iterator interface for like how duoSD ops works. But maybe we can do something there, and then have them compete kind of at the same level in the priority cache manager, and then this would maybe also help with if we didn't have the hashing fix for bucket shards, but certainly they would work well together, and it may not, the caching may not actually be that big of a deal once that gets implemented, or maybe it is. Maybe it's nice because if you're have multiple things trying to read a bucket index at the same time, maybe it makes it faster.
Yeah, it removes the artificial locality, but you still get it then becomes workload dependent, or as you would expect.
Yeah, exactly. The neat thing though is that if we have it there, once I get the age binning in for the LRUs, that's the piece that lets you start like dynamically changing the memory allocation per cache based on its age, the relative ages of things in the cache. So that if like all of a sudden this O node is getting hit with tons of bucket lookup requests, then it will start like quickly shifting memory over to the O node cache. And if that starts like, going away, then it shifts memory back over to the O node cache, to the O node cache. So that's the piece that I'm really excited about once we can get that going. So Matt, at that level, if it was kind of if that's the thing I'm talking about, not like a cache at the RGW.
Oh no, I totally. Well, that's where I want to see us make sure we have some amount of constant. In general, I want to see us constantly, at least give somebody on how to accelerate OSD. I mean, I'm hand waving if I talk about this, what the cache representation is, whether it's if it's essentially the part of the block cache or if it's something else. But yeah, I mean, if you think it has potential, we should explore it.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I think it is. I mean, it's good. It has insofar as locality of operate, of calls, and applies here, and I think it always does in this type of environment. Then I don't know whether there's a win here, but it sounds from what you say, it sounds plausible. And it doesn't change the semantics of directories, nor does it require us to try to cache all of a bucket. Consider that the bucket target, is a billion objects and a billion entries per. So that's going to. And even file systems, file systems have lots of caching, and they don't of this type, and it doesn't do well with large buckets, with large directories. So we're entering the dragon with that. But down here, you're caching what's in the path, and that is almost always same.
Casey, you had mentioned some concerns too. Do you have anything that you were concerned about beyond what we talked about here?
No, I mean, this stuff seems really reasonable.
Okay, cool. Josh, I'm going to call you out since you probably know the OSD code better than anyone else here. How would you feel about something that tried to cache OMAP at that level and like do OSD ops where we're calling all the OMAP iterator methods. I don't know how it would work or how it would look yet, but that's the area I'm kind of focusing in on.
Yeah, I think it has potential for improving some workloads. I think it does become very workload dependent, like Matt was saying. It's not clear to me how much of a benefit it would be, I guess. It might be interesting to prototype something simple and write out.
The thing that I'm struggling with right now is how to approach like the interface, right? Because we've got the kind of like multiple entry methods there that I'm not sure how that would work when you kind of try to layer an LRU in with it. I'm not quite sure how that would look yet, but
yeah, it could get a little complex with modifying the cache just due to the modification operations that RocksDB exposes. But maybe something at like the key value store layer doing the caching would make sense.
Yeah.
That sounds plausible. Or else, ultimately, the alternative would be just making sure that the extents needed are fresh, and that sounds like that. That has you could attack your other work, attacked it there. That would certainly help us, even though it wouldn't save us all the groveling work.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's good. It sounds like at least everyone's in agreement that this wouldn't be a horrible area of investigation, and maybe it would help a lot. Even if it's not as big of an improvement once the ordering for bucket short hashing gets.
Well, it would end up in. But I think traditional, the basic caching literature, which it is. I mean, it isn't going to affect this. Isn't going to impact this op in the same way. But it ought to affect. But it in general should be applicable.
Yeah.
So the ways we use OMAP, probably especially the ones with the other ones we use, like for example, one was the bucket index header guards that you were looking at, and lots of things that look like that are object based rather than.
Sure. Oh, that reminds me too, Josh. In Duo OSD ops, would you be terribly opposed if I broke out that switch all the case statements into their own functions?
That would be fantastic. It's
okay. Thank you.
In there.
Yes, and it's really irritating when I'm doing well clock profiling because it doesn't break out what op we're doing work in, which I'd really like. So I might write okay, cool. I'm gonna write a PR at some point here in the next couple of days to split all of those out into their own functions. Cool. All right. I think that's all I've got. Is there, Matt or Casey or Eric, anything else on your side that you want to talk about with any of the stuff or stuff that we missed?
Well, shoot, we're running short on time before the RGW stand up, but there is one thing that came up. Let me link the PR. This is related to the what is it? The 64K min alloc size.
Yes.
Somebody wants to move small data into X adders. I would prefer not to have to do that.
Yep, I would not do that. So I'm going to submit I'm going to submit a PR soon here for 4K min alloc size. I think between Igor's testing and the testing I did, we've at least got a justification for making a PR for it. It does not appear to significantly hurt us, and in some cases it's better. So I think we at least have justification to open the PR and start talking about it. Then the other thing is Igor is not here anymore. He left, but he has a PR that he's resurrecting to store smaller than 4K. Well, I don't know, small objects, I guess we'll say, in RocksDB itself. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but that would potentially then just store the data straight as part of the transaction that's happening.
Yeah, I find Yang Hagang's reasoning in the subsequent comments to be unsound as regards the cost relative to fixing this at the min-alloc size of BlueStore.
Well, yeah, part
There's
of
an
part of the
advantage there.
comment there sounds like they experimented with adding it to the O node in BlueStore, and so sounds like that direction at least aligns with what they're doing.
So and then into the BlueStore layer.
BlueStore wants to store general data there that I have no opinion about it.
Yeah,
But as far as putting in an OMAP, I don't buy that.
yeah, I don't know. It's up to you guys, I guess. But we'll on the OSD side, I think we will probably. I suspect we will probably be switching to a 4K min-alloc size. And
I
beyond
guess,
that, not sure yet.
yeah, maybe his comment about the implementation there is that BlueStore does store the X-adders within the O node, I think, right now. So switching to storing X-adders is implicitly doing the same thing as storing the data directly in the O node in BlueStore. So maybe that's why you're saying this implementation was simpler from that perspective. But I think it makes more sense to try to do it in the BlueStore level, since it'll be more general and help out with XFFS or other things that have tiny objects too.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. I'm going to take off.
All right, sounds good. Well, I think, is that it, guys? Are we done? I think so. All right, have a good week, guys. See you next week.
Thanks, Mark. See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your help, Mark.
No problem. Just glad it's working.